Dante a reminder, and he responded, "Thanks, Ed." So maybe that means he's going to make it.
Okay.
But we'll get started whenever you want.
All right. So we're going to start with the monthly finance real fast so we can jump into the budget part. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So as of May 31st, things are still tracking along rather well for us for this year. Still on target to meet all of our expectations and our projections on the on both expenses and revenue. So looking at the expenses overall.
Are you showing something, Rick? Because we're just seeing the agenda.
Oh, wait, hold on. Sorry. I got to slide it over to a different screen.
There you go.
Okay. Sorry. Do you see the full screen now?
I can. It's small.
Yes.
There, that's better.
Okay. So overall expenses at this point in time this year through May 31st are higher by about 2.1 million. Knowing the fact that we have spent a lot of money in COVID money, that the biggest part of that is, as we all know, is the charter schools have increased from about $7 million to a $9 million expenditure for us for this fiscal year. So they're up about 8.6. As we go through, you'll see the various line items that are higher. So charter schools right now are up over last year by 2.3. So there's the majority of the overall expenditure increase right there. That is most of it, and the other expenditures have kind of brought the rest of the budget down. Special ed is higher by 973,000, and regular ed is up by 1.3 million. Again, this is through May, which a lot of these May invoices from the charter schools. Hold on a second, guys. Somebody's trying to get in the meeting. Straight to delete. Not sure who this is. Somebody's jumping on here. Okay.
There's Dante. Yep.
Let me get back in. I had to let them in. Okay.
Is there any way you can make that a little bit bigger? Just to see the numbers?
I can. Just give me a second to swap screens. Give me 1 second. I'm presenting on a different screen. So let me go back out and reshare my screens.
I can't wait till we can go back and have meetings in person. Do you think we can do that soon?
Yeah.
I see a lot of
July. I was thinking July.
Yeah. I would love to be able to go back because it's just so much easier to see the screens, the numbers, what you're talking about. But of course, we'll have passed the budget by July.
Right. I was going to push for June, but I thought, okay, just wait for the governor's whole reopening thing to kick in, so that we're following the protocol. And so I think we should be safe to do it by July.
Good.
How's that? Is that a full screen now?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So again, special ed charter schools are up almost $1 million, and regular ed are up almost 1.4 million compared to this point in time last year. So you can see that we went from $7 million this point in time last year to almost 9.5, not a little over 9.5. And again, a lot of this is billed through the year already. So charter schools bill in advance for a lot of the schools. So a lot of this will be it for the year. A lot of this will be done for the year. Overall salaries and benefits are slightly higher than this point in time last year. No big deal there, as all the costs went up, and still keeping that under control. Special ed expenses, again, I think this is a good sign. The overall special ed expenses are up about $1 million, and as we just talked about, 973,000 of that is the charter school special ed cost. So 21% increase from last year, but it's, probably 95% of it is the charter school increase. So that's a good sign that we're not going up in that area. And as we talked about, we're planning on reducing that in the future. Regular ed expenses, this is everything but the salary accounts, are down 637,000 or 10%. Last month, so that's increasing. So last month they were down about 4%. This month they're down 10%. So another sign of improvement in our budget that these regular ed expenditures are down. Maintenance up slightly, but we know that we've been doing a lot in the buildings, and we've been doing more now with the ESSER funds than in the past year. So that's expected to increase. And then the big one, which is offsetting majority of the charter school increases, or almost half of it, is the transportation. So transportation is down almost $1 million from this point in time last year. So expenses, again, are up, but a lot of it is the COVID money, and the rest of it is the increase in charter school funding.
So Rick, where are we on the expense side? What percentage of budget have we used at? Do you have the
yeah, let me see. I can get it for you. 1 second. So we're at about 83.5%, Deb, of budget.
And where were we last year at this time? Do we know?
Right at 80.
Okay.
So about 3.5%.
Yeah, a little higher than where we were last year at this time, but still well within our budget.
Yeah, with 1 month to go, we're doing pretty good. Okay.
Okay.
Yep. What just happened there? Okay, revenue. Through May, real estate again, it went up even a little bit from last month at this point in time, but we're at $9.8 million, just almost 9.9. And again, we've exceeded it's up from last year by 873,000, and we've exceeded our face amount that we were anticipating on collecting by about $839,000. Which is really, really good for Wilkinsburg. So we're in the 80% collection rate, somewhere in the 84-85% collection rate for this current fiscal year. So again, that's a number pretty consistent with what we used to collect when our taxes were at the 32.61. Again, another strong area for this year is Melo Brungo Melo, 2.1 million, 812,000 above last year, or 60%. We budgeted 1.4, so we're almost $900,000 or so over budget from last year at this point in time, or over budget from this year.
Yeah,
this year.
That is pretty incredible that they've been able to.
Yeah, and we did receive another check again early in this month for last month, which was still on track, another $170,000 for the month of May.
So we're probably going to go probably another $250,000. Do you think?
I would say so. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I would say that. Wow. We're at about 2.3 now. So
we'll be about $1 million over our budget in delinquent tax collections.
Yes, and another 800,000 plus in regular tax collection.
Right.
So I wonder I'm so curious what's driving that.
Well, like I said before, and I know, a couple business managers at these meetings, when we talk to PASMA and stuff, they think it's that people have used their stimulus check
To
To
get
pay for
caught
their
up on
tax.
their property tax.
to get themselves out of the hole and get salt, on level ground again.
Well, for the delinquent tax collections, I believe a big piece of it is that they collected on a couple of really high commercial properties that were delinquent. So, and one was the hospital.
Right.
So
Yeah.
they've been able, they went bankrupt. Remember, we had reduced the taxes
Right,
for
yeah.
them. They were delinquent, and then
Right.
they were bought, and then there's the collections there.
What
Right.
about what about home purchase? I mean, if somebody wants to buy a home and as they're doing the due diligence, they find out that it has delinquent taxes. Somebody, either the seller or the buyer, has to clear that up before the home can be sold. So, and we know that more homes are being sold here. So
Right.
I'm just wondering if that could be a factor also.
Yeah, there could be a correlation there, Ed. You're right.
Yeah, that could.
Well, whatever it is, it's all good.
Yep.
Yep. D-transfer, again, back to what you just said, the sale of homes. Again, that's 160,000, almost 161,000. We did cut the budget quite a bit this year. We marked it down to 70,000, but that's a high number for us. Last year was really high. It was at $230,000. We didn't think we would do half as well this year, and we're doing rather well with another month to go in this area. So again, that's just the houses selling in Wilkinsburg and us collecting that percentage from the county. So that's another good sign. So those top three all probably tied somehow together with people moving into Wilkinsburg and buying homes.
Yeah, those are two areas where I believe we're very conservative in even next year's budget, that we will exceed what we budgeted there.
Yeah. Earned income tax, again, it is down a little bit. It's down to 95,000. But again, in the conditions we were just in for the last year, I don't think that's a huge loss. I think we can make that up next year. I mean, it's only almost 7%, which is nothing in that area. But it is down, and we anticipated that. And I think we're about $50,000 away or so from budget. So
yeah, we'll meet our budget in this.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah,
just down from last year.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay. State subsidy, everything is on track. We received our June subsidy payment early this year. We got it on June 2nd, 1st or 2nd of the month. So that was good. So everything went well there, and we're continuing to see subsidy through the month of June still come in, and that's a good sign, because usually that's the month where they tell you, hey, you're going to get your Social Security 2 months later. Well, we already got our retirement subsidy for June, which was around $300,000. So that's a good sign. So everything's tracking in the right direction with state subsidy, and no drop offs there. And again, overall revenue at this point in time last year, we're ahead by $2.7 million. I know we spent more, and a lot of that 2.7 is the reimbursement for the stimulus money, but we are behind in what they owe us by 230-some thousand, which we can talk about in a minute. There's a little PowerPoint slide there, or spreadsheet to show you. But so this is good. I mean, this definitely offsets the expenditures, and things are going well. I feel like we're going to hit our projections. I don't see any reason why we won't hit that surplus for this year of another $3 million.
Wow.
Does FBM, do they give us a report on what they collected?
Malo?
Yeah, whatever MBM stands for. I don't know if it's Malo or whatever.
Yeah, we do. We can print off a report from their website if we need to. What they give us every month is just a letter saying how much they're depositing into our bank account. But I can get your report on the collections.
Yeah, I'm wondering if maybe in the report that answers Ed's question about, why are we seeing such an increased effort, or increased results, I think. of these collections. I mean, what's going on from a macroeconomic standpoint?
Right.
That
Well,
would be a good thing for next month, Rick, to have, we'd have the end of the year probably, just a
Yeah.
report.
Do you want, Eric, are you interested in that information on a kind of granular level, or just sort of feedback from them as to why it's up?
The latter, I think. I don't want to look at each individual record. I'd like their insight into why we're getting better collections.
Okay.
That's easy. There's a person named Jennifer. Oh, you would have met Jennifer when you were on joint tax. Deb, I think an email to Jennifer, just say we noticed this, and what does she see as the three main factors that are driving that increased collection rate? And we can get that for you easily, Eric.
Yeah, for sure.
Rick, on the expenditures, is summer school and transportation included in that now, or not included, since it's starting next week?
No, these are actual expenditures through May 31st.
Okay. All right.
But the projections that he's having, where he's projecting that we'll still end the year with the surplus, take whatever expenses that are accrued in June will come back into this fiscal year. If they're accrued in July, they go into next fiscal year.
Right. And then just looking at cash, again, cash is strong. That's the ending of May with $8.3 million in cash. The first three line items down there at the bottom, 237, 8 million, and 20,000. Knowing that, like I just said to you, we've received over $3 million of state subsidy already for the month of June. So cash is going to be, again, we're going to be sitting on about $9 to $10 million in cash at the end of June, which is about $3 million higher than we ended last year in cash.
Wow, and that would be our surplus there.
So cash is doing well as the rest of the budget. And
You're lucky, Dr. Joe. Back in the days, we used to have to borrow money this time of the year to make our payroll and pay our expenses.
That's what I hear. That's what I hear. Trust me, we did in my last district as well.
So everything part of that presentation, all the supporting documents are down in here, whether it's in the expenses, revenue, cash, or the charter school, special ed, it's a breakout. The one thing we just talked about, which was the grant summary, I'll pull that up real quick just to show you where we're at with all the COVID grant. So actually, I was wrong. These numbers changed. So they owe us $71,000 of revenue. So you can see here that we've used $1.4 million of revenue. We've collected 1.3 revenue to offset that. There's still another $71,000 of revenue that we're owed for the money we've already spent. The big one, which is the ESSER-1 funds, you can see here we have $339,000, $338,000 still to spend. Projected, and that'll all be spent out of next year's budget. We're pretty much done spending for this year, so that 338 will just roll over into the 21-22 fiscal year budget.
So this is an important spreadsheet for all of the board members that are going to be here into the next fiscal year to keep watching, because as I was telling Rick a little bit earlier today, we need to be monitoring this closely, because we do not want to give ESSER money back. If we give ESSER money back, Debbie, as the concerned taxpayer, is going to be making some noise. So, and we have to plan how to use that money. We have so much of it, but we can use it to offset these general fund expenses, and we should use it to offset general fund expenses because we have the flexibility to do that.
Yep. Yeah, and you can see here that, we're going to start once July 1st comes rolling around, we'll start tracking this $4.5 million. We haven't spent any, we haven't received any, and that's the big one that's built into next year's budget. And then throughout the year, next year, at some point, there will be another one in here for the $9.1 million.
Right.
Deb, are you saying that if we don't use the money, we have to pay it?
Yeah, if you don't use it, you give it back. You're drawing down, you get to draw down what you turn in that your expenditures are. And if you don't turn that in by that end date, you lose it. So,
Like-
and that was my very first lesson as a business manager, and I will never make that mistake again, is I didn't spend all of the money I had. So,
Okay.
and
So,
then you
like-
don't get it again.
So like this money right here, Monica, for instance, is 338,000. If we don't spend all that by September of 2022, whatever is left there, we would lose.
Wow. Okay.
So
That
that's
would not
why
make any
Rick,
sense
yeah,
to not
Rick
spend.
has to watch those things carefully. So when those due dates are, and make sure that he's allocating the funds to those grants.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's nice if we can find like long term that it's going to impact us long term on some of those. So when it isn't there, it's already taken care of through this. Whatever we can do
Right.
according to the guidelines.
Right. Yeah. So we need to use this up and then plan to make sure that we're making some good long-term decisions.
Yeah.
So, just in closing on the May financials, and Debbie will, verify this, as we go through the month of June, we usually don't do another monthly presentation until after the audit is halfway through, because these numbers, if we were trying to present June's numbers, they would change over and over and over again based upon things that happen July and August. So there's a lot of things that go on in July and August. We'll get bills that were come in August for charter schools that we have to accrue back to June. We'll get bills in July that we accrue back to June. Even until the audit, when the auditors come in and we start talking, we'll pick a date and we'll say, okay, I'm just using this, September 1st. Anything that comes in after September 1st gets charged to the new year. Anything prior to that, we're charging back to the prior fiscal year. So June's numbers will change on the revenue side and on the expenditure side 10 more times between the final numbers are done. Would you agree with that, Deb?
Right. That's why we never know what the real surplus is until after the audit is done. Because it's their job to make sure that the things are classified in the right year.
Right. So this will kind of be the last presentation of this sort for the year, and then we'll talk more about things throughout the July and August, like the audit and different things like that. So, okay. Anything else on the financials for the month of May before we jump into budget again? Okay. What would you want to start with, Deb? Do you want to start with your spreadsheet, or do you want to start with Mike's?
Well, you know what? Let's go because we have some board members that haven't seen Mike's presentation yet, and I don't know if Victoria wants to go over that, or if you want to just go over it, Rick. Mike isn't here, but I know that Denny and Ed and Eric at least had the presentation last Thursday.
I mean,
Yeah, Rick, if you would want to go over it, because I don't think I was at the meeting when Mike explained this thoroughly,
Yeah.
so I'm not all sure what your conversation was about it.
That's fine. Go ahead, Ed. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, Rick, I think there's probably a way to jump ahead. I mean, there are certain slides, I think, that in the last half of it that really tell the whole story.
Yeah, I mean, again, so
Right.
just right. In summary, Mike Lamb from BDA has put together projections through the fiscal year of 23-24. And then, prior to us jumping into what he's actually projecting, he's using the budget numbers that the district has as of today, which is a $30.5 million expenditure side of the budget. And he's using no ESSER funds, no additional COVID funds in his projections. And then he's taking, if I can just get into just, looking at some assumptions, he's taking into consideration, our real estate tax growth of about 1.5%, earned income tax will grow of about 1.5%, which we just talked about, that we're anticipating those bouncing back for the district. But he is holding some things level, and definitely he's holding the state subsidy and the federal subsidy level. And again, based upon the fact that all districts are receiving COVID funds, we don't anticipate that the state's going to increase our subsidy over the next couple years, based upon us being able to use those ESSER funds pretty much for whatever we need to use them for. So he's making those assumptions here, and build down his projection for the 23-24 fiscal year. Some expenditure assumptions. What he's saying is the salaries and benefits will grow at a rate of about 3.5, which, you know, that we definitely know that that's where our teachers' increases are at, maybe a little higher on some, depending on what step and degree level they're on. But also taking into consideration all the other increases for salary and benefits. You got PSERs that are increasing. You'll have healthcare increases, which is all compounded on top of people's salaries. And he's taking into consideration here tuition for charter schools. He's figuring out that charter schools will grow about 2.75% a year, as well as the Pittsburgh Partnership tuition for the 200 plus students that are attending Westinghouse. We do know that we don't know what the charter school increases are going to be. That's just, how kids leave the district or come back. That all determines that growth. But we do know that the tuition rate for Pittsburgh Public is all based on the index, and the index is usually right around 2.5% to 3%. So he's just kind of picking the middle road there for the increases in tuition cost. And then he's taking the cost of inflation of about 2.25% across the board for all other expenditures, whether it's supplies or fuel or utilities. That would be the 2.25% increase. So those are his assumptions, both on the revenue and on the expenditure side. And again, his baseline for those assumptions are 21-22 budget numbers,
which are very conservative budget numbers on the revenue side.
Yeah, on the revenue, correct. So then jumping ahead a little bit to what he's projecting here, you can see that for next fiscal year, let's start with this year. He's saying that our revenue is going to come in at about 32.1. Expenditures are going to hit about 28.7. Then moving ahead to next year, based on this is what we're kind of having the budget: $30.5 million in expenditures and $29.3 million in revenue. And then, as you can see going on throughout the course of the next 2 years beyond, our expenditures jump up quite a bit to $31.4, another $1 million, and then another $1 million after that, where revenue is basically staying level.
Okay, and the reason why that revenue is less than this year is because he's using a 3 mil tax decrease in his revenue projections.
Yeah, I think he mentions that up in one of his slides somewhere, that he took that into consideration. So yes, that is a 3 mil decrease in those revenue numbers. Then what he's saying here in this slide is, okay, we know right now that we're anticipating a $3.3 million surplus for this fiscal year. So $3.3 million on top of what we've already accumulated will come to about $6.9 million in surplus. Projecting out using next year's budget numbers and the revenue and expenditures that we just looked at in the previous slide, the projections are showing that we probably will decrease our fund balance by about 1.1 million. Our fund balance will drop from 6.6 to 1.1, or down 1.1, so it'll be about $5.some million. Then the future year, 22-23, it would decrease again, and then 23-24, it would decrease again. So all these added up would come to close to about $5.2 million or so, $5.3 million in decreases over the 3 years in district fund balance.
Rick, can you go back to that for 1 sec? I should have asked Mike last week. There's this really precipitous drop, between this year, I guess it's this year, the tallest green bar, and then all of a sudden when we go into red the next year, that's a lot of millions.
No. So Ed, what this is showing, it's not that we're going to be.
Oh, sorry, that's the surplus. Never mind.
Yeah, that's a surplus.
Now.
That's saying that our expenses, are.
Yep.
I think
sorry.
This next slide is going to answer your question, what you were thinking.
So
here. Yep. So 6.9 is where we're projecting to end this year. That, jumping back real fast, this 6.9 minus this 1.1 brings you to 5.8.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's kind of where our fund balance is projected to be at the end of next year. And then we'll lose another, whatever it was, 1.9 million, I think it was, down to 3.9. And then we lose another 2 million, 2.6 million down to 1.2. So what he's saying here is that the reason this one is in red, based upon us being in the state watch list, the 5%, we have to maintain a fund balance of higher than 5% when you're on the state watch list.
So it's not a negative fund balance. It's still a positive fund balance, but it just falls slightly below the 5% threshold, which the 5% threshold is more like around $1.5 million. So we're only about $250,000 short there. And again, I feel very, very comfortable that we're going to exceed the revenue part of this. And I would bet money, and I'm not a gambler, that we will not fall below that threshold by 23, 24. But these are very, very conservative projections.
And remember,
the whole thing about the state watch list is so if we fall below that 5%, then we wouldn't be eligible to come off the state watch list, which we haven't pursued coming off the state watch list anyway. And I still, after all this time, don't see any benefit to coming off the watch list, except that it removes a certain shadow, a cloud that's over the district. But really, we come off the state watch list and you lose some supports that you can ask PDE for, like Michael Lamb. Without being on the watch list, then that sort of external consultancy goes away. So I've never been convinced that there's a huge benefit to us to coming off the watch list.
Well, I would argue that it does take time for the staff to have to meet with people and all the reports and stuff that you have to do for them to come off of it. But what Mike has told us is the state doesn't know how to take people off the watch list anyway. So whether we fall below or stay above it, we're always going to be on the watch list, because once you're on it forever.
Yep.
So
he's just saying to the district, maybe we should reconsider the 3 mil reduction. So, and reason being is, here's what he's saying: if our expenses are at 30.5 million, and they stay at 30.5 throughout that next year, 21-22 fiscal year, with no ESSER funds being added to this. And then based upon where we're at right now with our current millage at 29.5, he feels that we're going to be about $100,000 short of next year's numbers. Our revenue is going to fall short by about 100,000. Then the following year, the following bullet point here is if we would lower it by 1 mil, we would fall $500,000 short. And then you can see the progression down to 26.5, which is the 3 mil decrease. This being that we would fall $1.2 million short of our number. So this is the different millage decreases throughout the course of the year.
So that brings us to, I think, Rick, why don't you go to now the spreadsheet that I did. So basically, what I think Mike is, and I appreciate the, the projections. I think that we absolutely needed it. I appreciate the analysis. But I also think that there are some things missing, which is, or some things that we have to take into consideration. Mike's projections are assuming that we are not using any of the ESSER funds to pay for the next couple of years, which we have to use those funds. So that is the worst case scenario if we didn't have ESSER money. So what I did, and I just want to make sure that you realize this is something I did. I worked with Rick, to get the numbers to make sure they were right. But this is Debbie putting together a different scenario. So if you look at this spreadsheet in section A, those are I have the Wessel, that's the name of the company. That's Mike's company's projections. And so what I put it in a different format with revenue, expenses, your surplus deficit, and then your fund balance. So in that section A is what Mike was suggesting or projecting for the district, which after the 23-24 school year, that's showing our fund balance reduced to 1.259 million, which is below the 1.5 million threshold. What's missing in those expenses that I think we have to pay attention to is in those 21-22 expenses, that $30,516,000. It does not include over $1,031,000 in healthcare expenses and $100,000 for our online staff salary and benefits that are already being paid out of, we have allocated towards ESSER funds. If you recall, Rick put together a budget for, here's our general fund, here's what we are going to be charging to ESSER, and then he combined them because our total budget is not $30 million for 21-22, it's $35 million, right? Because he had to budget for that whole $4 million of ESSER funds. We know we're not going to use it, but he still had to budget for it. But we do know that we have $1,131,000 of regular operating expenses that will have to go on because we still have to pay healthcare. And depending upon the online staff, how that program goes, whether or not we fund that, that's debatable. But so they're not in Mike's projections. So one of the things in this second section, so that makes it seem even bleaker, right? But one of the things in this second section, the middle section, section B, is it says ESSER 2 fund usage. ESSER 2 is the $4 million. And what I asked Rick today is, what are the real expenses of the $4 million that we have to use versus what are the expenses that we had to put in, that we plugged in to make up the $4 million? The 100s and the 200s and the 300s are some expenses. We probably have about, close to a couple $1 million in those areas that for those healthcare expenses that are going to be used. But what Rick said in the 400 object category, the 500 object category, 600 and 700, those amounts there that are budgeted, they're in the budget, but we don't have any expenses to account for them. So that's our plug money. That we plug those numbers in there because we had to give the state a budget for that $4 million. So basically, the total of those four categories are $2,375,000 that has to be spent by September of 2023. That money can be used to offset general fund expenses. So those deficits that Mike is showing up above in his projections, we can use this money to offset it. So we have plenty of money to cover it, so we don't have these operating deficits that he's showing for each year. But one of the things that we want to make sure that we cover for 22-23 is we know we're going to have the continued health care and the online staff person. So if you look in that middle part under there, I subtracted $1,164,930 from that $2,375,000 that we have to spend. And what I did there is I took Rick's numbers that he already has in the 21-22 budget that's already being paid out of ESSER funds. And I increased it 3% to go into 22-23 to make sure that we are covered with those things for the next year, which leaves us still $1,210,000. of an ESSER 2 balance that can be used to offset the general operating expenses in 21 and 21, 22 and 22, 23, which is approximately about 600,000 a year if you split it equally between the two. We may not need it, depending upon if more revenue comes in and we have fewer expenses. But the bottom line is we have $1.2 million that we have to use, and the only way we can use it, unless we come up with they're going to build a rocket and send somebody to the moon or something, is to offset those general operating expenses. So, and then that doesn't even include the ESSER 3 balance of $9 million that we have to spend by the end of 23-24. Again, they can be used to offset these negative surplus and deficits that Mike is projecting over the next couple of years. So what I did in then section 3, and it's just for considering, just to show you, all I did is take Mike's projections, and I added the 600,000 of the ESSER 2 money that we have to spend as revenue in those 2 years. So in 21-22, I added 600,000 of revenue to Mike's numbers to get the 29,970. I left his expenses the same, and I did the same thing in 22-23. So my fund balance is going to be each year is going to be different from his. Then what I did for 23-24, when the ESSER 2 money goes away, I added those healthcare expenses to 23-24 to Mike's numbers. So again, I increased the numbers, another 3%, and added that to the $32,000 of expenses that Mike had for 23-24. Added those healthcare expenses and the online expenses in to get the 33,555. So, and then I just took, and this is a flexible number. We have $9 million that we have to spend by the end of 23-24. All I did is took 600,000 of that, 9 million, and I added that to the revenue that Mike had projected. And we will end up with a fund balance of $1,859,000, which is more than the threshold that we need to maintain. And if you ask me, we're going to have to use more than 600,000 to offset those expenses, unless we can come up with, we could use 2 million of that ESSER money in 23-24 and still end up with another positive fund balance of almost 4 million. We have the funds, we have to use them, we can't give them back. So I believe strongly that we are in the best position ever to give back to the taxpayer, to help them so they can continue to pay their taxes, their real estate taxes on time. And encourage economic development and everything else to bring our taxes down to be competitive with Woodland Hills and other school districts around us. We'll never be competitive with Pittsburgh because they are at like 9 mills, but they have earned income tax that pay for their schools. So it's different. You can't compare, you're not comparing apples to apples. But I believe strongly we are in the best position ever to give back. And if we don't give this back and use this money, give it back to a little bit to the taxpayer, if we end up giving it back to the federal government, you're going to have some very unhappy taxpayers. So we don't want to.
I would just throw in 2 other pieces here, Deb. Number one, remember that we have sequestered a nice sum of money for capital improvement. Remember, we set aside money for Kelly and for other projects we want to do. That money is still safe. That money is still set aside throughout all the numbers that Debbie has shown here and Mike's numbers. So that money's safe. We're not touching that.
And we don't have, Ed, we don't ever have to use that because
yeah, I know. I just wanted to know that pocket of money, everybody know that pocket of money is safe. We're not taking from that to fund the tax cut. And the second piece is Mike's numbers didn't show any progress at all on bringing back charter kids, not even one. So, and we know that effort is going to be, well, okay, we can't know it, but we certainly believe that effort is going to be successful. So Mike, rightfully so. I mean, he didn't budget on something that he can't see, but we can. And so he built in, like, I don't know what, a modest 3% or something increase in charter expenses each year to allow for inflation and things like that, instead of showing any credit for decrease over that whole 3-year period. So,
and I'll add to that, if we don't bring charter school kids back, if we keep losing kids to charter schools, then we have to question, why we better question why we keep losing the kids. But I strongly believe that we can bring the kids back. We should be trying to bring the kids back. And if we're not, then we're not setting the right goals for Dr. Joe and his staff. But I believe that we are in such a strong financial position. What Mike's numbers are showing us is if we didn't have any ESSER funds, but we have $13 million in ESSER funds that we have to spend that can offset these general fund expenses. I believe that we'll probably end up using $5 million of it, and we'll end up in 23-24 with another $5 million positive fund balance. I truly believe that.
I think what we were talking about also, as far as like the taxes that are being collected, I think once we find out, we see what's actually happening and how we're getting so much more than we had, expected. And if we find out it's because people are moving into the district, I think that's only going to continue to happen, especially if we can lower the tax base here, the taxes like that. We'll have even more people moving in, which then again is going to add to our revenue. Correct. So I feel like in order to get people into, the biggest reason people don't move into Wilkinsburg is because of the taxes. And if we're improving the schools and we're lowering the tax, oh my gosh, I don't see any reason why we would not have people moving into Wilkinsburg. And right now with the housing market the way it is, there's a lot of housing in Wilkinsburg that can be renovated. I think we're only going to see that happening here in Wilkinsburg. And so I think this is the right time, if ever, to lower our taxes, to attract people to our borough. It seems to me like that, I know this is being very conservative, and thank you so much, Debbie, for putting this together. I think it was really so helpful, to see this and to get a good understanding of, we needed both perspectives. And I think this was really, really helpful. I know for me, at least, to see this and to hear your side, like to hear why, you still were comfortable with lowering taxes given Michael's projections. So this has been really informative. And I do appreciate you putting this together because it really simplifies it. Breaks it down to my level where I can understand it and my head's not completely spinning anymore looking at all these numbers. So I do appreciate that.
And what I said to Rick is that also you just have to be paying attention, in next year to see and keep doing these 3-year projections, because if you see that it's dropping when all of those ESSER funds go away, and then when we see it dropping, which it will in 24, 25, unless some of these other things, our expenses go down and our revenues, don't go up, then you're going to have to say, well, I might have to raise it $1 million in 23, 24. But still, you're giving people for 2 years, you're giving them some tax relief until now. And a lot of things can happen with the state, with how the cyber schools are being funded. I have to be, I just have to hope and pray that will change, if not this year, next year.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. Over this 3-year period, there's going to be some kind of a change to the whole charter school funding situation, especially on the cyber side. And then once again, I just want to point out, Mike's a CPA, he's got to do things exactly with the straight and narrow. And so the fact that we have been working. Dr. Iverson is working, and Joe is inheriting, and I believe Joe's going to ask his team to make some modifications to this plan, all right, about bringing back charter kids. Mike's not allowed to factor those things in, but we know that that's going to happen. And when you think about it, the 50 kids, the enrollment drop of 50 kids last year, most of those kids were from Kelly, and a lot of those kids were pre-K and kindergarten kids whose parents, they didn't go to charter schools. They just didn't go anywhere. So those kids are more than likely coming back to us. And I think I think that can be said for a lot of the losses that we had last year. So, so there's not a direct connection between the number of kids we lost and the charter school expenses going up.
I think that's an excellent point, Ed. Actually, I was talking about that with someone where, yeah, I think that's right. These kids went to the cyber schools, and once our schools open back up, I think we'll get a lot of those students back. So good point. They didn't go to just to another charter school in person, charter school. They went online. And if we do offer that online option, they'll have both choices. So I cannot see why we wouldn't get a lot of those kids back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like you said, Deb, if we don't, we need to really investigate that.
Right. We need to look to see why we keep losing kids, because we are doing all of the things that we can as a board. We need to have data. We need to have the information about why the kids are leaving, and that's one of the things I think we had asked for before. Why did the 50 kids leave? Do we know? Yeah. That's
we can only guess. We can only guess why they left. And after Mike's presentation, and I gave it a lot of thought. I dropped Joe a note over the weekend about the whole waterfront learning model and that partnership, and my concerns about it. This can be held for the planning meeting tomorrow night, but actually, I don't know why Dr. Iverson didn't simply try to pursue what we were doing in the last 9 weeks. We've had kids in the classrooms and teachers teaching live, and kids at home watching the exact same things happen simultaneously. So why we would buy into a model where so much of the education is asynchronous, kids doing stuff by themselves, I can't imagine why. So that was something that I asked Joe to talk about with his team, and it might be worth going to the union to work out a model where we just keep doing that. It was great. So I don't know why we would throw that away once the teachers got really good at doing it. I don't know why we would throw that away and buy into a largely asynchronous model that we have not tried before. So I know that's throwing kind of throwing a spanner into the works at the last minute, but it's not quite last minute. So that's worth it.
Then pay them more to do it.
Give them a stipend. Yeah, have a talk with the union and find out how can we do this together.
Can I ask a couple questions?
You bet.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure, and just to think about the 5% threshold. Is that because we're in financial watch? Because looking at Act 48 of 2003, and then what I've always been told, it should be 8%. Has it changed?
No, 8% is what we're allowed to have as a fund balance that is what we would say unreserved. So we could just keep 8% of the total revenue in the bank, so to speak, and we don't have to say what we're using it for. Then anything over 8% has to be earmarked as a reserve. So you have to say, I'm going to either use it for PSERS, healthcare, capital projects, special ed, you name it. So anything over 8%, the state requires you to mark it as an assigned fund balance. Up to 8% technically is unassigned.
Okay.
The 5%, what the 5% is saying is any district that is on the state watch list, when their fund balance drops below the 5% of the total revenues, they look at that as red flags.
Okay. And the other question I had, and this was before me, but I know it's going to be an issue. Legal fees for, personnel issues and things like that. I'm not sure what the one last major one that we had, the overall cost in that. So I'm not sure how that might impact, Rick. I know we haven't sat down and talked about it. Like, what's that going to look like down the road because we may have those issues arise. And then as you saw with these, I'm just worried about those bills and cyber charter and things like that. Hopefully they don't get passed. It gives more money to cyber charter. That's what worries me a little bit.
Right.
Well, the legal bills, we always have that, and Rick budgets for those. Those are out of our general operating fund. So he's budgeted based upon history. So we've always had those same types of expenses. So
now with the legal fees, though, we budget for Matt's fees. So anytime we end up getting into a legal situation that's a personnel matter that ends up, we end up being sued over something, the majority of that cost is covered by the insurance company.
Okay, that was my concern, because it's going to arise. And that was my concern. And I just, like I said, I hope the cyber and the charter thing, those two bills that I sent, you never know with our legislator. It just kind of worries me with them. I mean, they're not friendly to public schools.
well, we're going to keep after them, because when we keep seeing all this, the cyber schools fund balances.
And whatever you need me to do on my end, I mean, I don't mind going to Harrisburg if I need to be in Harrisburg. So
Yeah. Well, that will be one thing when I am off the board, I can focus on something, and trust me, I'm going to keep after some of those legislators. So, and just keep asking how they can justify, cyber schools that have $60 million fund balances, $60 million fund balances. So
it goes to the owner and CEO.
right.
And we can go to. I'll go to Harrisburg with you.
Yeah.
Let's do it. We'll road trip it.
We need to be more proactive for sure with all that.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that, by the way, this rosier picture. I mean, it's certainly 2 meetings ago, last meeting compared to this meeting is a very different picture from what was presented. I think it just looks a lot more positive, and I really appreciate what you've done as well.
Well, like I said, I think it'll be more, we have to use those funds, so it has to be included. What we worry about is when those funds go away, which is further down the road.
Sure.
That's when that's when we really have to work. But I think we're good for the next couple of years because of this. I don't know what formula they use to give us $9 million, but it's the first and only time that I have ever known them that we have benefited from some magic formula that has been dropped into our laps.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, a district down the road similar to us, East Allegheny, only received $2 million.
Yeah. I don't know how they calculated it, but we're going to take it. We're going to use it to the best of our ability to help the kids, make sure the schools are good, and also if we can, with what we've done before we even had it, if we can give something back to the taxpayer and make people it a better place and a happier place for people to live and move into Wilkinsburg, then we should do it.
I agree.
I agree.
But how do we not know? That's crazy that they only get $2 million. We get $9 million. We have no idea why. Like, how can we not know that? Or can they come back and say, "Oh, we made a mistake. We shouldn't have given you that much. Never mind. It's only this much that you're really allowed to spend now."
No, I think the way they did it was they based it upon our federal program money and the percentage we receive in federal program, and then they took that same percentage and applied it to the total dollar amount that they're getting from the federal government.
What's the size of that school district, Rick? Do you know?
East Allegheny is that's the one that's partnered with Duquesne, right? Duquesne. So I want to say they're right around 1,200, 1,300 kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of what percentage of low income kids that they all have. So.
Yeah.
I see. Well, it's about time that we got some.
I know.
And districts like ours that do have a lot of low income kids. Like usually it's the other way around. So
yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, just again to piggyback on what Debbie said, if the board is going to continue down this road with 3 mil, we just got to make sure that we monitor this come the end of next year, knowing that we may end up having to raise taxes down the line another year later. because of ESSER funds going away, and if we don't cut our expenses, which is the only expense we're looking to cut is charter schools.
Right.
I mean, doing this as long as I've done it, people will forget about the cut once they get a tax rate increase real quickly. So I was in a district where they didn't raise taxes for 8 years and then got a big tax increase, and they quickly forgot about the 8 years before that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's a
Yeah.
year by year basis.
Right.
Yeah, I don't see it happening. I don't see it turning out where we have to make where we've got to claw back a mill, at the end of 3 or 4 years here. We were nervous. I was nervous when we did the 3 mil cut 2.5 or 3 years ago, and worried about were we going to be able to live on the income that we were generating. And it worked out just fine. Rick is excellent at managing our money. He's excellent at it. Debbie has been, incredible as a finance chair. I don't know where we'd ever get anybody else like that to be a partner in managing our money. So, and look at the fund balances we've built up. All right. Look at the money we've banked, and we cut taxes for the first time in decades. So I have confidence in our ability to do this again. And once again, especially since it's in our plan, there's no way we're not launching some kind of a better than cyber online program, better than what's out there, online program for kids. So I think we can do this. I'm confident.
So that's it. I mean, unless anybody has any other questions. Eric, you've been quiet.
Well,
Eric?
maybe Eric being quiet is better than the other night when he kind of wanted to blow up the whole system. What did Eric want to do? He wanted us to deliberately go into, Eric was really trying to teach the state lessons last week. He wanted us to deliberately go into receivership. I don't know what it was. He was really getting radical.
Yeah, I didn't want us to do that. I wanted us to think about what we could do and what message we might send if we did that.
I know, I'm teasing.
Yeah, but I think the point that I was trying to make was, the charter school, there's an agenda, right, in our state legislature to blow up our school and enable all private schools in this community, throughout the state. And I think, the broader country would actually love to have their own private education system, that leaves students like ours in our district behind, to turn back into slaves, I guess, is what they want. And I don't think that's the right thing to do. On the other hand, they're forcing us into this model. I mean, the laws that exist today and have been passed, and the way the charter school laws are written, where basically we have to pay the charter schools no matter what, and they get to bill us unfairly, and we have to then claw back the money. Now that was set up with a deliberate mindset of making it easy for them and difficult for us. I mean, there's no other conclusion that you can draw when you see what the effect is. So I would like to blow the system up at some point and make the people who created that have to answer for that. I would love to do that. Unfortunately, those people are gone. Mike Turzai and the other parties who were able to drive that kind of wedge into our school system, they will face no consequences because they're not running for election anymore. So.
Yeah, but we can go after the ones that are there. We're going to do it, Eric. I'll get you. We'll go.
Eric, that was dope, man. That's crazy. We got to get.
I'll have time. Once I'm off the board, I'll have time to start gathering you, and all I need is just your voice behind me. We'll go.
And I'm with y'all too, but I really feel confident for upcoming with all the good press we've been getting lately. Like as far as like the school and kids are loving Turner and they're learning and we're doing good once we go to Westinghouse. I just feel like once more people are vocal about, get excited about Wilkinsburg, I think the kids will come back. I'm confident in that, like, because everything they hear is just negative stuff from people that been out of school for 20 years. That's like, in charge of the narrative, but we have to bring the narrative back and bring that excitement, and I think they'll come back. I love us, like, now we've been doing so great, but it just hasn't been put out there. It's like only like the people on the board and in the schools know the exciting things, and it's not like, being shared like it should be. But I think once they look back at the past 2 years and be like, yo, Wilkinsburg School District's doing some amazing things, and we have to get behind it or we'll lose it.
I'll tell you what, if you guys, I wish you board members had been able to see, maybe there's a way to get a tape, but last Friday, a reporter from the Post-Gazette got me and Kelly and 3 of our students who wrote books, the book writing project. And
Yes.
we were all on Zoom, all on Google Meet. And by the way, those kids maneuvered their way through Google Meet better than any of us who were on the call. I mean, it was brilliant.
Not
It's brilliant how well they
surprising.
did. One had a parent sitting nearby, but the parent was absolutely not needed at all. But the point was the way they talked about their books and how they got the idea and what the story was about. It was brilliant. It just would have made you feel so good about what's going on in our schools. And they're, and okay, so I was an English major. Their grammar and putting together sentences and all that stuff that a nitpicker like me would be looking at. These kids were so great, just so great.
That's great. That's
But we do have to go to our planning meeting. But I just before we break, I want to say, I think I've noticed a big change even since we've gotten Kelly Hanna, and just like as far as marketing and pushing, the school district, like just social media. I've just seen an improvement, a big improvement, and that I'm really happy with. I got a little thing in the mail the other day for pre-K and kindergarten registration, and I was so happy to see that because I don't think I've ever got anything like that before. Like it was just, I'm noticing little things like that, and I think that makes a big difference, because that's what I've been saying for years before I got on the board, is we need to market this school district. We have to, no matter whether we like it or not. We are in competition with the charter schools and the private schools, and we can't just sit back and just be like, oh, we're just a public school feeder school. If kids come, they come. If they don't, they don't. We don't have that option, and especially if we want to continue lowering taxes and keep them lowered.
Yep.
And Monica,
we
you
need to do better.
You nailed it. We are in competition, and as I said last week, I like competition. That's okay. And thinking about what we talked about. I don't know if it was with Debbie or who. I can't remember. We talked about, even somebody mentioned about like a Pittsburgh promise, but a Wilkinsburg promise. So I don't know if where all that plays into to anything that we're doing with our finances and so on. But I love that idea. With our class sizes the way they are, keeping in max, because 20, you can get 30 into a high school classroom easy and teach that. But 20 is a great number for elementary classroom because you can individualize and personalize. But if we think about those things and market, if we can come up with some type of Wilkinsburg promise, you go through our school system. And I think was that Debbie? Debbie, we have a conversation. Oh, she left already.
No, I can leave, but I have to go get my dog.
I thought that was Kelly Hanna's idea. She wanted us to be able to start a 529.
Yeah.
Where money goes into an account. For
I brought it up to you guys during the finance meeting that Kelly Hanna and I have been talking about that.
Yeah, Rick, thank you. And we were just waiting to hear from Matt if there's any legal way to be able to do that, for us to kick in some amount of money. And if the kids go on to college, then great, they get to use that money. If they don't, it stays in the pot, I think, however those things work. But we would be the only district I've ever heard of that's doing such a thing. And so
that'd be awesome. We have a small dual school district, so if we can make it happen, I mean, we do have a pretty small district, so why not do as much as we can for the students? And again, like when I tell people my son's going to be going into Kelly, putting him into Wilkinsburg School District for kindergarten, they kind of look at me like, why? They want to know why I would choose that. And it's not just because I'm on the school board, but I believe that it's going to be a good move for him. But I have to, I give reasons, and we need to make sure that parents have they can say that, because then, and me saying that to people and telling them why I'm choosing that right there is marketing. That is promoting and pushing our school. We need to equip parents to be able to say, this is why I choose Wilkinsburg. So we could have a whole thing of like why I'm choosing Wilkinsburg. Parents need to know this is why, because now we have a Spanish program, we have this, we have that, we have all, we have small class sizes. Like, people in the district need to know that. And if our district residents do not know why they should pick Wilkinsburg, then we are failing. So we need to make sure that
That's the marketing campaign. Pick Wilkinsburg.
Right.
That is the marketing campaign right there.
There you go. Yeah.
And
Why choose Wilkinsburg? That's the marketing.
That's why
Come on,
we
Nick,
have to invest in marketing and spend some money. You can't do
Yes.
it. You can't get them back without spending the money.
Yes.
We need to, and we have it now. And then if we can talk about at some point, like, what are the things that we can do to make ourselves more attractive or appealing to bring those students back? If we can use the money to do that, why not? Because I will not be happy if we don't spend all this money and we have to give it back, when we could do things to make our district more appealing. If there are options or ways, if you guys need ideas like how to spend this money, I can come up with a lot of them. So.
I know, but that's why I'm looking forward to being able to get back together in a room where we can actually talk and plan for some of these things. Hopefully we can. And I know, Dr. Joe, we talked about that, pulling the board together and coming up with some goals and strategies and how to communicate and, that kind of stuff.
We're only 2 square miles. I can go door to door if I have to go door to door. That's fine.
Yeah.
I
mean, that's it with the budget. I don't know. I don't want to belabor this. I know you guys, we could probably go on and on forever, but does anybody else have any questions?
Monday. I'm sorry. I was saying we got another meeting. I was confused. Never mind. I was thinking about tomorrow's meeting.
That's
so
tomorrow.
We got time.
Yeah, Monica, you definitely had me feeling like it was Tuesday with that.
I'm sorry,
I mean, we got to
Dante,
finish up. We got this planning meeting after this.
Yeah. Usually we have like meeting, like an executive, and then. So I'm sorry. That was my bad.
Just want to know, who's going to get credit if we do lower taxes, the 3 mills? It'll be the new mayor.
That's right, Dante.
Yeah, he'll get the credit.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
No, I'm sharing that credit, man. It's not I and me; it's a us and we thing.
Yeah.
That's true, Dante. Yeah, I forgot all about that. You can help promote and market from your end. Now,
That's what I'm saying. We got to bring this excitement back to the school district, man. We are doing so many great things, and word of mouth is not getting it.
I grew up in the middle of COVID. One of our neighbors, who was an ex-teacher, she had a therapy dog, and I asked her if she goes to nursing homes and blah blah. No, she went to Kelly, and with the dog is non-judgmental, and the kids they'd put a blanket out, the dog and the kid, and she would sit on the blanket, and the kid would read to the dog. And she said this woman taught at a lot of in very, let's put it this way, in districts that have a lot more money than ours. She said she was blown away at the reading capacity of these kids and how well they read at Kelly. And she went on and on for 15 minutes. I mean, she doesn't live in Wilkinsburg. She lives up here in Blackridge, I think, in Penn Hills. But anyway, I was just thinking, boy, she'd be the type of person we need for, a little promo as well.
We got some good parents. I just talked to one of our 6th grade parents. He's willing to do whatever to help us out because their daughter's going to Kappa. So
great.
We have some good parents that are willing to be vocal about it.
Well, Dr. Joe, that art appreciation program, that was incredible. That brought tears to my eyes. So there's good things happening.
That's Mr. Van. I tell you what, I don't know how many years Mr. Van's been here, but he's a great asset to this district.
Yeah. So
I was just going to mention, like I see on the news in the morning, Pittsburgh Catholic Schools has advertising, to bring in students into their charter school system. And, I would not be against allocating some funds here to put some advertising together.
Yeah, radio advertising. Yeah,
something in our local community that hits our community, right? I don't want to broadcast stuff over to the other side of Pittsburgh, but I mean, here in our local community, if we could reach people, and I think Kelly's obviously the person to work on this. One of the things that I saw, when I first joined the board, I did see a particular problem with communications, just like everybody else, and I think I was pretty vocal when we were, trying to find somebody to get communications going into the community. I still feel like we still need to do more here, because I'd like to see more social media presence. But I'm getting flyers in the mail from the school district, which has never happened here at this household before. That's amazing. And the fact that we're in the sun. I'd like to see more. I'd like to see flyers in the community somewhere. I'd like to see some street work somewhere. But the fact that we are communicating with the community, and I see the effect of that's a huge positive development. And we gotta build on that momentum.
Yeah. Well, quite honestly, the board has to take responsibility there because we were real tight with our marketing budget, weren't we, Rick?
We were.
We didn't want to give the PR people that we've had, and we've had some good PR people. We didn't want to give them any money, so that's our fault. We couldn't convince them that you have to do that to get, so. But now that we have a board that feels differently, I think we can do a lot of good things. But I'm going to wrap up the finance part of the meeting. If unless people have more finance questions, my dog wants to eat and my husband wants to eat. So.
Thank you all very much.
Good night, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Good
Good night.
Good night.
Well,
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rick.
Yes, thank you, Rick. Thanks for doing all the work.